Cleaner was ashamed for not knowing how to read, but the billionaire's daughter discovers it and does something incredible. The clock read 6:15 when Tess arrived. Punctual, as always. Her light footsteps barely made a sound on the entryway rug as she hung her thin coat on the coat rack. Fall had come early this year, painting the neighborhood trees with shades of orange and red that looked like vivid watercolors. The Parker house was spacious and bright, with large windows that let in the golden morning light. Tess liked that. In the places she had worked before, heavy curtains always blocked the sun, making cleaning an even lonelier job. Here, at least, she had the company of the light. She followed her morning routine with the precision of a Swiss watch. First, the kitchen. She washed the dishes left from the night before, dried the glasses, and organized the pots and pans. Her slender fingers, with short, clean nails, moved skillfully among the utensils. She didn't have to think much about it. Her body already knew the way. The house was still asleep. Mr. Parker, Mike, would leave for the office at 7:30. Little Chloe would wake up around 7, and Tess wanted to have the breakfast table ready before then. She put water on to boil and set out the fruit to be cut. Silence was her most constant companion. In 6 months of working in that house, Tess had learned to move without making a sound, as if trying not to disturb the air around her. It wasn't shyness, it was just the way she had found to exist in other people's spaces, invisible, efficient, useful. At 7 o'clock sharp, she heard the first movements from upstairs. Light, almost bouncing steps. Chloe was awake. The 6-year-old girl had the energy of a small son, and as unlike many children, woke up instantly cheerful, as if she didn't need time to say goodbye to her dreams. "Good morning, Tess." The childish voice arrived before the child, who appeared at the kitchen door still in her pajamas, a light blue set with silver stars. "Good morning, little one." Tess smiled, continuing to cut the fruit. "Did you sleep well?" Chloe nodded energetically, making her blonde curls bounce around her face. Her eyes, a blue so light it resembled a spring sky, sparkled with the typical excitement of someone who sees the world as a grand adventure. "I dreamed there was a dragon in the garden. But it was a nice dragon that only ate flowers, not people." She climbed onto a chair, resting her elbows on the table. "He had blue wings, just like my favorite socks." Tess served the girl a glass of milk, who thanked her with a smile full of small white teeth. "And what did you do with the dragon?" Tess asked while setting the table. "I taught him to read." "Dragons don't know how to read, did you know? They only know how to breathe fire." Tess felt that familiar pang in her chest. Her smile wavered for an instant so brief that no one would have noticed. She continued arranging the fruit on the plate, trying not to think too much about it. "It must be hard to turn the pages with those huge claws," she commented, subtly changing the subject. Chloe laughed, a crystal-clear sound that seemed to brighten the sunny kitchen even more. "That's why I held the book for him." And I pointed to the words with my finger. "Like this." She made the gesture in the air, moving her index finger as if following an invisible line of text. Mike Parker appeared at the door, already dressed for work, with his dark blonde hair combed back and his tie perfectly straight. "So good morning to the two ladies of my life." He smiled, kissing the top of his daughter's head. "What's for breakfast today?" "Fruit, toast, and scrambled eggs, sir," Tess replied, stepping back a little to give him space. "Perfect. And Tess, I've told you before, you can just call me Mike." She nodded, as she always did when he mentioned it, but they both knew she would continue to use sir. Some distances were not easy to shorten. During breakfast, Chloe dominated the conversation with stories about her dragon dream and her plans for the day. Mike listened with genuine attention, asking questions and laughing at the right moments. Tess kept herself busy, cleaning the counter, preparing the girls' lunchbox, always alert in case they needed anything, but maintaining a proper distance. "I'll need to stay late at the office today," Mike commented, looking at his watch. "Can you stay with Chloe until 7? "Of course, sir." Tess nodded. Staying with Chloe was never a problem. The girl had a sweetness that made the work feel lighter. After Mike left, Tess helped Chloe get dressed for school. The girl chose a blue dress with small embroidered butterflies and insisted on combing her own hair. though she needed Tess's help to pin her bangs back with a delicate clip. "Can I take my new book today? The teacher said we can show our favorite books during circle time," Chloe asked, pointing to a colorful pile on her bedroom shelf. "Of course you can. Which one do you want to take?" Chloe ran to the shelf and, after a few seconds of serious contemplation, pulled out a book with a bright green cover. "This one. It's about a girl who discovers a secret garden." Tess took the book Chloe held out, looking at the cover carefully. There was a beautiful illustration of a dark-haired girl opening a gate covered in climbing plants. The title was written in elegant, golden letters. "It looks very nice," she commented, handing the book back to Chloe. "It's the best book in the world. My teacher is reading a little bit to our class every day. Yesterday we stopped at the part where Mary finds the key." Chloe's eyes shone as she talked about the story. Tess watched, fascinated by the girl's enthusiasm. There was something magical in seeing how words awakened such joy, such curiosity. The school bus honked outside. "Come on, it's time," Tess said, helping the girl put on her backpack. Chloe gave Tess a quick hug before running to the door. "Bye, Tess, see you later." After the yellow bus disappeared around the corner, Tess went back inside. The house felt strangely empty without Chloe's vibrant presence. There were so many rooms, so many spaces to clean, but suddenly everything seemed too big, too quiet. She started with the bedrooms, changing sheets, vacuuming carpets, dusting furniture. She worked with a quiet efficiency, a talent she had developed over the years. In every house she had worked, she had learned to become almost invisible, to care for the spaces without leaving any trace of her presence other than cleanliness and order. In Chloe's room, she paused a little longer than necessary. Unlike the other rooms in the house, this space overflowed with personality. The walls were a soft yellow, decorated with drawings made by the girl herself. There was a bed with a white canopy, a dresser with small objects collected on outings, shells, colorful stones, bird feathers, and the bookshelf filled with books. Tess ran her fingers along the spines of the children's books. Some were thin with more illustrations than text. Others, thicker, had only small images scattered among the paragraphs. She picked one up and opened it. The letters were there, arranged in neat lines. She knew they formed words, sentences, entire stories. She knew the shape of some, could even identify the most common ones. But together, in sequence, they turned into an undecipherable code. A secret she had never had access to. She closed the book and put it back on the shelf, trying to push away that familiar feeling of inadequacy. She had so much to do. She couldn't waste time on thoughts like that. She finished tidying the room and moved on to the rest of the house. The day passed in its usual routine. Cleaning, laundry, preparing the lunch she would leave ready for when Chloe returned from school. Tess liked the organization of her days, the predictability of her tasks. It was comforting to know exactly what needed to be done and how to do it well. At 3 in the afternoon, the school bus dropped Chloe back off. Tess heard the door open and hurried footsteps down the hall. Tess, look what I made today." The girl burst into the kitchen like a small hurricane of energy, holding a piece of paper. "Calm down, little one. Let me dry my hands first." Tess smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. "Now, show me." Chloe held out the paper with pride. It was a colorful drawing made with crayons. It showed 2 stick figures, a smaller one, with spiky yellow hair and a blue triangular dress, and a larger one, also with yellow hair, wearing what looked like a green dress. "It's the 2 of us in the garden," Chloe explained. "You and me planting flowers. Look, I wrote our names too." At the top of the drawing, there were 2 words written in the crooked, uncertain handwriting of a child learning to write. Chloe and Tess, in capital letters of different sizes. Tess felt her heart race. There was her name, written by Chloe's small hand. 4 simple letters that carried so much meaning. "It's beautiful, Chloe." Her voice came out a little softer than usual. "Do you really like it? The teacher said I'm getting better at writing. I used to write the letters too big. Now they're smaller." "It's perfect," Tess smiled, holding the drawing carefully as if it was something very fragile. "Can I keep it?" Chloe's eyes lit up. "Yes." I made it just for you. Delicately, Tess folded the paper and put it in her apron pocket. She felt a strange emotion, a mix of gratitude and sadness that she couldn't quite name. Are you hungry? I made pasta with tomato sauce for lunch. My favorite! Chloe clapped her hands. Can I help you set the table? Of course you can. While they ate, Chloe talked about her day at school, how she had read aloud to the class. Tess felt that familiar pang, how she had learned about the planets, how she had played tag during recess. And the teacher said we're going to have a special project next week. The girl continued between bites of pasta. Everyone is going to write a short story and make a book, with a cover and everything. That sounds like fun, Tess commented, trying to keep the enthusiasm in her voice. It's going to be the best project ever. I can write about anything. I'm thinking of writing about a girl who finds a magical cat that can talk. What do you think? I think that's a great idea. Will you help me? Chloe's blue eyes fixed on hers, full of expectation. Tess felt a lump in her throat. I can listen to your ideas. You're the one with the creativity for it. After lunch, Chloe insisted on showing Tess all the books she had recently received. They sat in the living room, and the girl brought one volume after another, telling her about the stories, showing her favorite illustrations. This one has a princess who doesn't want to get married and prefers to study stars, she explained, showing a book with a purple cover. And this one has a boy who finds a dinosaur in his basement. Tess watched attentively, commenting on the illustrations, asking questions about the characters. She carefully avoided any mention of the text, focusing only on the pictures and the stories Chloe told. Do you like to read, Tess? Chloe asked suddenly, looking at her with that frank curiosity of a child. The question caught Tess off guard. She felt her heart beat faster, as it always did when the subject got too close to that secret. I like stories, she answered carefully. Like the ones you tell me. The answer seemed to satisfy Chloe, who continued showing her books. But Tess noticed something in the girl's eyes, a spark of perception she didn't expect to find in someone so young. In the late afternoon, they sat together at the kitchen table. Chloe had homework to do, write 5 sentences about her favorite animal. Tess prepared dinner while the girl worked, casting occasional glances at the notebook, where Chloe formed letters with her tongue between her teeth, a sign of concentration. There was something fascinating about watching those little hands creating words. The ease with which the girl transformed thoughts into letters, letters into words, words into ideas that others could understand. It was like a little bit of magic happening right before her eyes. I'm done, Chloe announced, holding up her notebook. Want to see I wrote about dolphins? Tess came closer, pretending to examine the work. She could see that the letters formed organized lines, but the meaning remained locked away from her. It looks very nice, she commented, pointing to a drawing of a dolphin Chloe had made in the margin. I especially like this detail here. The teacher said my handwriting is getting better. Chloe smiled, as proud. I used to write everything too close together. Now I leave space between the words. Tess nodded, turning back to the stove. That familiar feeling of inadequacy settled in her chest again. How much longer could she hide it? How much longer could she dodge questions, pretend to understand things she didn't? When Mike arrived later than usual, Chloe was already in her pajamas, sitting in the living room with one of her books open on her lap. She wasn't really reading, just looking at the pictures and retelling the story she already knew by heart. How was my girl's day? He asked, setting his briefcase on the couch and loosening his tie. It was awesome, Daddy. I showed Tess all my new books and made a special drawing for her. Mike smiled, tired but attentive. That's wonderful, Princess. And you, Tess, did everything go well? Yes, sir. Dinner is ready, and Chloe has already done her homework. You're an angel, you know that? He shook his head, genuinely grateful. I don't know how I managed before you came. Tess felt her cheeks warm at the unexpected compliment. I'm just doing my job, sir. After serving dinner and making sure everything was in order, Tess got ready to leave. As she put on her coat, she felt a small hand take hers. Tess, wait. Chloe was holding another book, different from the ones she had shown earlier. This one looked simpler. with large, colorful letters on the cover. "I want to give you this. It's one of my books from when I was learning to read. It has really nice pictures of animals." Tess looked at the book, then at Chloe's hopeful face. The girl had no idea what that gesture meant, how much it stirred up feelings Tess tried to keep buried. "That's very kind of you, Chloe, but this is your special book. I want you to have it. I have others, and this one has easy words." Chloe's gaze was intense, as if trying to communicate something beyond the words being said. With slightly trembling hands, Tess accepted the gift. "Thank you. I'll take very good care of it." That night, in her small apartment on the other side of town, Tess sat on her bed with two treasures: Chloe's drawing, now carefully smoothed out and placed on the nightstand, and the children's book, with its colorful pages and simple words. She opened the book to the first page. There was a picture of a red apple and, next to it, a short word. She knew it was apple, but not because she could read it, only because she knew the pattern of those letters together, had seen that combination in grocery stores, on juice boxes. Her fingers touched the page with reverence. Somewhere inside her, a small flame of hope ignited. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. She put the book in the drawer, along with the drawing. That would be her secret, her little treasure. But as she prepared for sleep, one image persisted in her mind, the picture of Chloe, bent over her notebook, creating worlds with words. The beauty of that process, the freedom it represented. And for the first time in many years, Tess allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to be able to do the same. The weeks went by, and fall gradually gave way to winter. The mornings dawned colder, with a soft mist that covered the gardens like a delicate veil. Tess started arriving in a thicker coat, and Chloe swapped her light dresses for long-sleeved shirts and colorful pants. The routine at the Parker house continued its usual rhythm, but something subtle had changed. The book Chloe had given Tess, the one with animal pictures and simple words, had become the housekeeper's secret treasure. Every night before bed, Tess would flip through it carefully, as if the pages were made of something fragile and precious. She tried to decipher the symbols next to the images, recognizing some letters, trying to blend the sounds, getting frustrated when the meaning escaped her. On a rainy Tuesday, Mike called to say he would be stuck at the office late. "An important meeting," he explained. Tess noticed the disappointment on Chloe's face when she shared the news during dinner. "He promised he would help me with my school project today," the girl said, poking at her food with a fork without much enthusiasm. "What project is that?" Tess asked, serving a little more mashed potatoes onto the girl's plate. "I have to make a poster about my favorite animal for science class," Chloe sighed. "Daddy said he would help me cut out the pictures of dolphins we found on the internet." Tess looked at the girl's downcast expression. The blue eyes that normally sparkled now seemed as cloudy as the sky outside. "I can help you," she offered, almost without thinking. "I'm not as good as your dad, but I know how to use scissors." Chloe's face lit up instantly. "Really? You'd do that?" "Of course. After we finish dinner and you take your bath, we can work on your project. You're the best, Tess." The excitement returned to the girl's voice, and she began to eat with renewed enthusiasm. Later, the kitchen table was covered with colorful paper, open magazines, glue sticks, and scissors. Chloe had printed several pictures of dolphins and set out blue construction paper to make the sea background. "We'll need to write some things about the dolphins," Chloe said, focused on carefully cutting out the silhouette of a leaping dolphin. Things like where they live, what they eat, how long they live. Tess felt that familiar tightness in her chest. "You can do the writing, and I'll take care of gluing the pictures. Your handwriting is very nice." "Thanks," Chloe smiled, proud. "The teacher said I've improved a lot since the beginning of the year." While Chloe focused on cutting, Tess arranged the finished pictures, thinking about the best layout for the poster. They worked in a comfortable sink, with the rain pattering softly against the windows and the aroma of hot chocolate that Tess had made for them. "Done," Chloe announced after an hour. "So we finished the pictures part. Now I need to write the information." The girl picked up some sheets of paper where she had jotted down facts about dolphins. Tess watched as she began to transfer this information to the poster, writing with her tongue between her teeth in concentration. There was something fascinating in the way her small fingers held the pencil, in the way her light eyes narrowed slightly as she formed each letter. "Do you want to see what I'm writing, Tess?" Chloe asked suddenly, looking up with those big, curious eyes. "Of course," Tess replied, moving closer. "Look, I wrote that dolphins are mammals, not fish. That means they breathe air like us, not in the water like fish." Chloe pointed to one of the sentences on the poster. "And here I wrote that they can live up to 40 years. That's a long time, isn't it?" Tess looked at the words with a sparkle in her eyes. There was admiration there for Chloe's knowledge, for the girl's ability to turn thoughts into written words. But there was also a shadow of sadness, an invisible barrier that separated her from that world of letters and meanings. "That's amazing," Tess commented, her voice a little softer than usual. "You know so many things." "My teacher says I'm curious." Chloe shrugged, as if it were no big deal. "I like learning about animals. Did you know that dolphins sleep with one eye open?" "I didn't know that," Tess smiled. "How do they do that?" "It's because only half of their brain sleeps at a time. The other half stays awake so they can breathe and don't sink." Chloe gestured excitedly as she explained. "So I'm going to write that down too. It's a very cool fact." Tess watched in silence as Chloe wrote this new piece of information on the poster. The girl was completely absorbed in the task, the tip of her tongue sticking out the corner of her mouth as she carefully formed each letter. "What do you think, Tess? Is it looking good?" The girl held up the poster so Tess could see the completed work. It was truly beautiful. The colorful pictures of dolphins leaping against a blue background, the words written in large, well-formed letters for a 6-year-old. Tess could see the effort, the care Chloe had put into every detail. "It's perfect, Chloe. Your teacher is going to love it." The girl smiled, satisfied, and began to put away the supplies. As they tidied the table, Chloe talked non-stop about the presentation she would give at school, how she would tell her classmates about dolphins, how she would show the poster, how she would answer questions. "Sash Tessie, Mom," she said suddenly, with the typical frankness of children. "Do you like to read?" The question caught Tess off guard. She felt her heart race, her hands sweat slightly. "Why do you ask?" Chloe shrugged, fidgeting with a piece of paper. "I never see you reading. Daddy always reads the newspaper at breakfast or books before bed. But you never read anything." Tess took a deep breath. That inevitable moment she always dreaded seemed to have arrived. For a second, she thought about dodging the subject, about making up some excuse, but something in Chloe's innocent blue eyes made her hesitate. "I have something else to show you," Chloe said, not waiting for an answer. She ran to her backpack and returned with a colorful notebook. "It's my writing journal. The teacher asked us to write a short story every day." "Want to see?" Tess nodded, a lump forming in her throat. Chloe opened the notebook and began to show the pages, one by one. There were short stories, just a few paragraphs long, written in her still imperfect but legible handwriting. Next to each text, Chloe had made drawings to illustrate her stories. This one is about a butterfly that didn't know how to fly, but its friends taught it. Chloe pointed to one of the stories. "And this one is about a lost puppy who finds a family." Tess looked at the pages with a mixture of fascination and melancholy. She saw the pride on Chloe's face, the enthusiasm with which she showed each story, and she felt that familiar sense of inadequacy, of being on the outside of a world she had never had access to. "Your stories are beautiful, Chloe," she said, sincerely. "Can you read this one out loud?" the girl asked, pointing to one of the pages. "It's my favorite. About a girl who finds a star that fell from the sky." Time seemed to freeze for a moment. Tess looked at the words on the page, at the symbols that, to her, were just shapes without complete meaning. She felt the weight of the secret she had carried for so long, the invisible wall that separated her from so many things. Her voice failed her. "What's wrong, Tess? You don't like this story?" Chloe's face showed genuine concern. It was in that moment, looking at the girl's innocent expression, that Tess felt something break inside her, So many years of hiding, dodging, pretending. So many years of silent shame. Chloe. Tess took a deep breath, her hands slightly trembling. I can't read your story. Is it too hard? The girl tilted her head, confused. I can write an easier one. It's not that. Tess swallowed hard. They were sitting at the kitchen table, just the two of them, with the rain falling outside and the rest of the house silent. Maybe it was the right time. Maybe it was safe. I can't read any story. Chloe's eyes widened slightly. What do you mean? Tess felt the weight of the words she was about to say, words she almost never spoke, which she kept like a shameful secret. I never learned to read, she finally confessed, her voice barely a whisper. The silence that followed seemed endless. Tess kept her eyes down, unable to face what she imagined would be judgment or pity in the girl's eyes. Her face felt hot, her hands cold, her heart racing. But then she felt small, warm fingers touch her hand. Never, not even a little bit. Chloe's voice held no mockery or judgment, just sincere curiosity. Tess shook her head. I only know how to write my name. I don't know the letters well or how to recognize words. I look at a text and just see symbols that don't make sense to me. Why didn't you learn? Don't they teach everyone to read in school? Tess took a deep breath. How could she explain a lifetime of circumstances to a 6-year-old? And I couldn't go to school much when I was little, she explained, choosing her words carefully. My family needed me to help at home, and then I started working very young. By the time I realized I had fallen behind, I felt too old to go back to the classroom. Chloe absorbed the information with the seriousness of someone trying to understand something very important. But how do you read recipes when you cook, or read messages on your phone, or know which products to buy at the store? I learned to get by, Tess replied with a small, sad smile. I memorize recipes that people tell me. I ask other people to read messages on my phone. I recognize products by the pictures and colors on the packaging. The only thing I know how to write is my name. Chloe's blue eyes were fixed on hers, attentive, without a hint of judgment. There was only understanding and genuine curiosity. That must be hard, the girl said simply. Tess felt a lump in her throat. In her entire life, few people had reacted this way to her confession. Without excessive pity, without judgment, without making her feel diminished or inferior. Just acceptance. Sometimes it is, she admitted. There are many things I can't do. I can't read bedtime stories. I can't understand signs in new places. I can't fill out forms by myself. And you never wanted to learn, even after you were grown up. I wanted to. A lot. But, Tess hesitated. How to explain the fear, the shame, the barriers she herself had built over the years? It's hard to start something like that when you're an adult. People expect you to already know. Chloe was silent for a moment, seeming to think deeply. Then, with the simplicity and clarity that only children possess, she offered, I can teach you, if you want. Tess blinked, surprised by the unexpected offer. Teach me to read. Chloe nodded, excited by the idea. Yes, I can show you the letters and how they form words. It's easy when someone explains it right. My teacher says I'm good at explaining things to the other kids. There was so much enthusiasm, so much confidence in that innocent proposal that Tess felt her eyes well up. A 6-year-old child offering, without hesitation, the key to a world that had always been denied to her. Don't you think it's strange? Her grown-up learning from a child, Chloe shrugged, with that simple, direct logic of childhood. Daddy always says it's never too late to learn new things. He started playing the guitar last year and said it's harder to learn when you're older, but not impossible. Tess let a small smile form on her lips. The shame she had felt moments before was beginning to give way to something different, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. You're not going to tell your dad about this, are you? She asked, suddenly worried. He might not want me to keep working here if he finds out. Why not? Chloe seemed genuinely confused. Some people think that people who can't read aren't smart enough for certain things. That's silly, Chloe declared, with the absolute conviction of a child. "You know how to do lots of things that me and Daddy don't. You cook better than anyone I know, and you clean the house so everything is perfect. And you know how to fix broken things too." Tess felt a wave of gratitude for the simplicity with which Chloe saw the world, a world where everyone's skills were valued for what they were, not for what they weren't. "So, do you want to start tomorrow?" Chloe asked, already excited about her new role as a teacher. The fear and insecurity were still there, but for the first time in a long time, Tess felt that maybe, just maybe, she could take this step. "Yes," she finally replied. "I'd like that, very much." The smile that lit up Chloe's face was like a ray of sunshine amidst the rain falling outside. The girl clapped her hands on, excited. "This will be the best. I'll get everything ready. I have extra notebooks and colored pencils, and we can use my easiest books to practice." As Chloe talked excitedly about her plans for the lessons, Tess felt something shift inside her. The secret that had been a burden for so long, a barrier between her and the world, had now turned into something else. A possibility. A beginning. A door opening. That night, after Mike got home and Chloe went to bed, not before giving Tess a tight hug and whispering, "We start tomorrow," Tess returned to her small apartment with a different feeling in her chest. She took the children's book Chloe had given her weeks ago from the drawer. She looked at the colorful cover, at the letters that formed the title. She still couldn't read them, but something had changed. Now those letters no longer seemed like distant, intimidating enemies. They looked like promises. The morning after her confession, Tess arrived earlier than usual. Her hands trembled slightly as she unlocked the door to the Parker house. A mix of anxiety and excitement stirred in her heart, feelings she hadn't experienced in a long time. The house was still asleep. The first rays of sun barely pierced the living room curtains, creating golden patterns on the floor. Tess went to the kitchen and started preparing breakfast, trying to focus on familiar tasks to calm her nerves. She was setting out the fruit when she heard hurried footsteps coming down the stairs. They weren't Mike's heavy steps, but Chloe's bouncing ones. The girl appeared at the kitchen door, still in her pajamas, her blonde hair messy and her blue eyes shining with excitement. "Good morning, Tess," she exclaimed, with surprising energy for that time of the morning. "I woke up early so we could start." Tess couldn't help but smile. "Start what?" "Our lessons, silly." Chloe rolled her eyes as if it were obvious. "I got everything ready last night after you left. Come see." The girl took Tess by the hand and pulled her to the living room. On the coffee table, there were notebooks, colored pencils, erasers, and a few children's books. Everything was arranged with the clumsy care of a 6-year-old trying to imitate the organization of a classroom. "Chloe, is your dad awake yet?" Tess asked, suddenly worried. "Not yet. He always sleeps until 7 on weekdays." "We have 40 minutes. The girl checked the digital clock on the wall, proud of her ability to calculate the time. "I don't know if we should—" "Please, Tess," Chloe's eyes pleaded, "just a little bit before Daddy wakes up. I promise we won't make any noise." Something in the girl's enthusiasm melted Tess's last resistance. She nodded and sat on the couch, while Chloe assumed a posture that mimicked her teacher at school. "First, we're going to learn the alphabet," the little teacher announced, picking up a notebook where she had drawn large, colorful letters. "These are all the letters that exist. There are 26 of them." Tess looked at the page with a mix of fascination and apprehension. She recognized some letters, like the T and S from her own name. Others looked like completely strange symbols. "Let's start with the vowels," Chloe continued seriously. "They're the most important because they appear in almost every word." She pointed to 5 letters she had circled in red. A, E, I, O, U. "Repeat after me. A, E, I, O, U." Tess repeated, feeling strangely vulnerable. It was a curious feeling, being there, a grown woman, repeating basic sounds under the instruction of a 6-year-old child. "Very good," Chloe clapped, imitating the positive reinforcement she probably received from her teacher. "Now let's see how they sound in words. A as in apple, E as in elephant, I as in igloo, O as in octopus, and U as in umbrella. For each example, Chloe showed a drawing she had made next to the letter. Her drawings were simple and childlike, but perfectly recognizable. A yellow and black bee, a grey elephant, an island with palm trees, a white egg, and purple grapes. Note, I've localized some of the examples to better fit English phonics. Abelha, apple, ilha igloo, ovo octopus, uva umbrella. Your turn, Chloe said. What word starts with A? Tess thought for a moment. And, yes, Chloe's smile lit up the room. And with E? Egg? Perfect. With I? Ice? That's right. With O? Orange. Yes, and with U? Tess hesitated. Up? Exactly. Chloe seemed genuinely impressed. You're good at this, Tess. The sincere compliment warmed Tess's heart. It was funny how a simple acknowledgement for something so basic could make her feel so good. Now let's move on to the consonants, Chloe continued, turning the page. These are a little trickier because they have different sounds depending on the vowels that come after them. For the next 20 minutes, Chloe went through each letter of the alphabet, explaining its sounds with simple examples. Tess repeated, sometimes confusing similar letters like B and D, or forgetting the pronunciation of some less common ones. It's normal to get confused at first, Chloe assured her with adorable seriousness. I used to get them mixed up too when I was learning. The teacher says our brain needs time to remember the shapes. They heard footsteps upstairs. Mike was waking up. We have to stop now, Chloe whispered, quickly gathering the materials. But we can continue after school, right? Right, Tess confirmed, helping her put everything away in a colorful box. When Mike came down for breakfast, he found Tess making pancakes and Chloe setting the table, just like any other normal morning. Nothing in their expressions gave away the little secret lesson they had shared. The lessons continued in the following days, always at times when Mike wasn't around, before he woke up, after he left for work, or when he was stuck at the office late. Chloe took her role as a teacher with a touching seriousness, preparing homework for Tess to practice at night in her apartment. Tess discovered that learning to read was much harder than she had imagined. It wasn't enough to know the letters. You had to join them into syllables, then into words, and understand how the sounds changed depending on the combinations. Sometimes, she felt frustrated with her own difficulty, especially when she couldn't remember something Chloe had already explained several times. Don't be sad, Tess, Chloe would say when she noticed her frustration. The teacher says everyone has their own pace for learning. Some are fast at math, others at reading, others at drawing. The girl's patience was surprising. She never showed irritation when Tess made mistakes or forgot something. She just explained it again, in a different way, often making up funny associations to help Tess remember. The B has its belly facing right, and the D has its belly facing left, she explained one day, drawing the letters in the air with her finger. Understand the P is like a B with a long leg, and the Q is like a D with a long leg. Tess started creating her own memorization system. She would cut out packaging from products she used at home, cereal boxes, milk cartons, cookie packages, and try to identify the letters she knew. At night, she practiced writing in a notebook Chloe had given her, carefully tracing letters, like a child taking her first steps in writing. One afternoon, after school, they sat at the kitchen table for another lesson. Mike had called to say he had an important meeting and would be home after dinner. Today we're going to put more syllables together, Chloe announced, placing colorful flashcards on the table. On each card was a simple syllable: B-A, B-E, B-I, B-O, B-U, C-A, C-E, C-I, C-O, C-U, and so on. Look closely at each one, the girl instructed. First, recognize the letters. Then blend the sounds. Tess looked at the cards, identifying the letters she knew best. B-A, B-A, she tried. That's it. Now, B. B-E, B. Perfect. Now, B-I. B-I, B-I. They continued with each card, Tess gaining more confidence with every syllable she managed to pronounce correctly. There was something liberating about hearing her own voice form those sounds, as if she were deciphering a secret code. "Now," Chloe said with a mischievous smile, "let's put two syllables together to make words." She took the card with TA and placed it next to the card with BLE, localized casa to a more phonetically simple English word. "What does it make?" Tess looked at the two cards, trying to blend the sounds in her head. "Ta, blee, table? Yes." Chloe clapped enthusiastically. "You read your first word." But Tess shook her head. "I only guessed because you put the cards together. I don't know if I could read it if it were written down." "Let's try." Chloe took a piece of paper and wrote in large, clear letters, "Table." Tess looked at the word, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. She focused on each letter, trying to remember the sounds. T, tay, she began, slowly. BLE, blee, tay, blee. Table. A wave of emotion washed over her, so intense it almost left her breathless. She had read a word, a real word, written on a piece of paper, not just recognizing a familiar pattern like her own name, but deciphering something new. "You did it!" Chloe jumped out of her chair and hugged Tess. "I knew you could." Tess felt her eyes well up. It was just a simple word, 5 letters, that any 6-year-old would read effortlessly. But for her, it represented something monumental, a first crack in the wall that separated her from the world of letters. "Want to try another one?" Chloe asked, already writing on another piece of paper. In the following minutes, Tess read with growing confidence. Ball, cow, duck, fairy. Each correctly deciphered word was met with enthusiastic applause from Chloe, whose pride seemed as great as Tess's. "I have a challenge for you now," the girl said, writing something longer on the paper. Tess watched the letters form, feeling a pang of apprehension. There were more letters, joined in a way she didn't immediately recognize. Pencil. Tess took a deep breath, facing the challenge. P-E-N, pen, she began, sounding out the syllables slowly. C-I-L, seal, pen, sil, pencil. That's it. Chloe clapped so hard her small hands turned red. "You read a big word." There was such pure joy on the child's face, such genuine pride in her students' achievements, that Tess felt her heart overflow with gratitude. Here she was, a grown woman who had spent her whole life avoiding situations that exposed her limitation, now celebrating as a huge victory the ability to read words that 6-year-olds mastered effortlessly. And there was no shame in it, not with Chloe looking at her that way, as if she had just accomplished the most impressive thing in the world. "Can I try writing one now?" Tess asked, feeling bold with her new knowledge. "Of course." Chloe pushed the paper and pencil toward her. With a slightly trembling hand, Tess carefully wrote, "Cake." "Is that right?" she asked, unsure. Chloe examined the word with the seriousness of an experienced teacher. "Yes, it's perfect. Kaki, you wrote cake." Tess felt a wave of satisfaction run through her body. It was as if something dormant inside her was finally awakening, a capacity that had always existed, but had never had a chance to flourish. "I want to try one more," she said, pulling another piece of paper. This time she concentrated intensely, trying to remember the exact shape of each letter. She wrote slowly, "Sun." "Sun," Chloe read aloud. "You wrote sun, and the letter L is perfect." Note, corrected Chloe's dialogue to reflect the word written. "And the letters are perfect." Tess looked at the word she had just written, 3 simple letters that together represented something bright and warm, just like she felt inside at that moment. "Thank you, Chloe," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You don't know what this means to me." The girl smiled, her blue eyes shining. "Now you can read stories by yourself like me." "There's still a long way to go for that," Tess laughed. "But I'm starting to believe that one day I will. I'm sure you will." Chloe spoke with the absolute conviction that only children possess. "And when you do, we'll read books together, 1 page each." The image of that possible future, her and Chloe sitting side by side, sharing the reading of a book, filled Tess with a determination she hadn't known before. It wouldn't be easy, she knew that. There was so much to learn, so many obstacles to overcome. But that small taste of success, that simple word, sun, that she had managed to read on her own, was like a promise that the light was within reach. "We'll practice more tomorrow," Chloe said, gathering the materials. "And I have a surprise for you." "What surprise? If I tell you, it won't be a surprise." The girl laughed, putting the papers in her special lessons box. As they prepared dinner together, Tess found herself looking at the letters on the pasta box. Before they were just meaningless shapes. Now, she was starting to recognize some patterns, some combinations. The world of words, which had always seemed locked away from her, was showing its first cracks of opening. That night, after Mike arrived and Chloe went to bed, Tess returned to her apartment with a different energy. Instead of turning on the television as she usually did, she sat at the small kitchen table with the notebook Chloe had given her. Page after page, she practiced the letters they had learned. Then she tried to write the words she had managed to read earlier. Table, ball, sun. She looked at the last word for a long time. It was simple, so simple. Just 3 letters. But for Tess, it meant a light was beginning to shine in a place that had always been dark. She took a fresh sheet of paper and, with the utmost care, wrote, "Thank you, Chloe." She wasn't sure if it was completely correct, if the letters were in the right order, or if she had written it exactly as she should. But the act itself, trying to express gratitude through written words, felt like the most important step she had ever taken. Tomorrow, she would show Chloe. Tomorrow, they would continue their journey together. For now, Tess fell asleep with a new and comforting feeling. That, finally, she had begun to find her voice in the world of letters. The weeks passed, and the secret lessons between Tess and Chloe settled into a comfortable routine. Every afternoon, after Chloe came home from school and finished her homework, the two would sit at the kitchen table for another learning session. Always mindful of the clock, they would finish before Mike got home from work. Tess's progress surprised them both. She could now recognize all the letters of the alphabet and read simple words without hesitation. Short sentences still posed a challenge, but Tess's determination grew with each small victory. The notebook she used for practice at home was already filled with several pages of her careful handwriting, still a bit uncertain, but improving every day. Chloe, in turn, blossomed in her role as a teacher. The responsibility seemed to have made her even more attentive and patient. She created games to make learning more fun, drew colorful flashcards with new words, and celebrated each of Tess's advancements as if it were a personal victory. "You're almost ready to read a whole book," Chloe declared one afternoon as they put away their study materials after another successful lesson. "I think there's still a long way to go for that," Tess laughed, carefully folding her exercise sheets. "No, there isn't. I have the perfect book for you to start with." Chloe ran to her backpack and pulled out a thin book with a colorful cover. "This was the first one I read all by myself. It has short sentences and lots of pictures." Tess took the book, feeling that familiar mix of anxiety and hope. The pages were a bit worn from use, and there were some pencil marks where Chloe had probably underlined difficult words. It was a precious object, not just for its content, but for what it represented: trust. "We can start reading it together tomorrow," Tess suggested, placing the book on the table. "1 page each. How about that?" Chloe's face lit up at the suggestion. "Yes, that will be perfect." They were so absorbed in their plans that they didn't hear the front door open. They didn't notice the footsteps in the hallway. They only realized Mike's presence when he was already standing in the kitchen doorway, watching them with a puzzled expression. "Daddy?" Chloe exclaimed, surprised but not alarmed. "You're home early." Tess felt the blood run cold in her veins. She quickly tried to gather the papers scattered on the table, but it was too late. Mike had already seen everything. The sheets with writing exercises, the flashcards with words, the children's book open between them. "The meeting ended ahead of schedule," he explained, walking into the kitchen. His eyes scanned the materials on the table, lingering briefly on a paper where Tess had practiced writing simple sentences. "What are you two doing?" Before Tess could think of an explanation, Chloe answered with the typical frankness of a child. "I'm teaching Tess to read and write. She can already read whole words and even write short sentences." "Isn't that amazing, Daddy?" Mike's gaze shifted from Chloe to Tess, who kept her eyes down, her hands trembling slightly as she continued to gather the papers. "That's interesting," he said, with an expression Tess couldn't decipher. There was no condemnation in his voice, only curiosity. "Faz, how long have you been having these lessons?" "Almost a month," Chloe replied proudly. "We started with the letters, then the syllables, and now we're on sentences. Tess is the best student in the world. She learns super fast." Tess finally found the courage to look at Mike. Her face was flushed with embarrassment, and she felt her heart beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Sir, I can explain," she began, but Mike interrupted her with a gentle gesture. "Chloe, sweetie, could you go to your room for a moment? I need to talk to Tess about grown-up things." "But we were in the middle of our lesson," the girl protested. "I can continue later," Mike assured her, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I just need to speak with Tess in private for a few minutes." Chloe looked from her father to Tess, sensing that something important was happening, but unable to understand exactly what. With a resigned sigh, she gathered her colored pencils. "Okay, but don't be long. Tess still needs to practice reading page 5 of my book." She gave Tess a quick hug before leaving, as if to reassure her. When they were alone, the silence in the kitchen seemed deafening. Tess kept her eyes fixed on the pile of papers she had gathered, unable to face Mike. She felt exposed, vulnerable, as if her most intimate secret had been forcibly torn from her. "Tess," Mike finally broke the silence, his voice calm. "Would you like to tell me what's going on here?" She took a deep breath, trying to control the tremor in her hands. She had imagined this moment many times, always dreading it. Now that it had finally arrived, she felt strangely resigned. Perhaps it was a relief not to have to hide anymore. "Sir," the words seemed stuck in her throat. How could she explain a lifetime of closed doors, of missed opportunities? Mike pulled out a chair and sat across from her. There was no impatience in his gestures, just attentive expectation. "My daughter is teaching you to read," he said. Not as a question, but as a statement he was trying to understand. "Why didn't you tell me you needed this?" Tess finally found the courage to look at him. She saw no judgment in his eyes, only confusion and what seemed like genuine curiosity. "I can't read," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "I missed the chances I had because I had to work from a young age. I never managed to learn." The words came out with difficulty, heavy with the weight of years of shame and concealment. It was the second time she had admitted it out loud. The first had been to Chloe, but somehow, confessing to an adult felt much harder. "I see," Mike said, nodding slowly. "And how did Chloe find out?" "She noticed. Kids notice things that adults often don't." Tess gave a sad smile. "She showed me one of her notebooks and asked me to read a story she had written. I couldn't come up with an excuse." Mike was silent for a moment, processing the information. Tess could see the thoughts crossing his face, surprise and understanding, perhaps even a pang of admiration for his daughter. "Oh, why didn't you tell me when I hired you?" he finally asked. Tess felt fear rise again. This was the question she dreaded. "I never tell my employers," she admitted. People judge. They think that someone who can't read isn't capable. I've lost jobs before when they found out." Her hands clenched together on the table. "Your daughter just wanted to help me. Please, don't fire me." The last words came out almost as a plea, filled with the real fear of losing not just her job, but also the connection she had formed in that house, especially with Chloe. Mike seemed genuinely surprised by the request. "Fire you? Why would I do that?" "Because I lied." "By omission, but still." Tess couldn't finish the sentence. "Tess," Mike leaned forward a little, his tone serious but gentle. "You are the best person who has ever taken care of this house and my daughter. Chloe adores you. I trust you. The fact that you can't read doesn't change any of that." Tess blinked, surprised by the response. She had braced herself for anger, disappointment, or at best condescending pity, but Mike's calm acceptance caught her completely off guard. "What surprises me," he continued, "is that you managed to hide this for so long. How do you get by with recipes, shopping lists, messages I leave?" "Adaptation," Tess replied, feeling a little more secure. "Say I memorize recipes, I recognize products by their packaging. I ask other people to read messages for me, saying I forgot my glasses. You learn to manage when you have no choice." Mike nodded thoughtfully. "It must have been difficult." "It was. It is." Tess felt something loosen inside her, like a knot beginning to unravel. "But I'm learning now." "Chloe is an amazing teacher." A small smile appeared on Mike's lips. "That doesn't surprise me. She takes everything she does very seriously." He glanced at the papers on the table. "May I see your progress?" Hesitantly, Tess pushed some of the practice sheets toward him. She felt strangely vulnerable, as if she were showing a very private part of herself. It was her still uncertain handwriting, her attempts, her mistakes and successes. Mike examined the papers with genuine attention. "Impressive," he commented, "for someone who's only been learning for a month." "I still make a lot of mistakes," Tess hurried to say. "We all do when we're learning something new." Mike handed the papers back. When I started playing the guitar last year, my fingers were raw and I couldn't make a decent chord for weeks. Chloe used to laugh at the horrible noises I made." The comparison caught Tess by surprise, drawing a small smile from her. "It's different." "Why? Because you're an adult? Because reading is something and everyone should know?" Mike shook his head. "That's nonsense. It's never too late to learn something new, and you have the courage to try, which is more than a lot of people do." Tess felt a wave of gratitude for his unexpected understanding. "Thank you," she murmured, not knowing what else to say. "Don't thank me yet," Mike said, leaning back in his chair, "because I don't think these makeshift lessons are enough." Tess's heart tightened again. Was he going to forbid them from continuing? "What do you mean?" she asked cautiously. "I mean you need more than lessons from a 6-year-old, as talented as my daughter may be as a teacher." Mike smiled. "There are adult literacy programs at the public library. Structured courses, with proper materials and experienced teachers." Tess felt her face flush. I wouldn't have the courage." "Why not? You've already taken the hardest step, admitting you want to learn and starting to try." Mike looked at her seriously. "Tess, you take care of my home and my daughter. I leave what is most precious to me in your care every day. The least I can do is help you achieve something you want." His words touched Tess deeply. She had never thought her employer would see the situation this way, not as a flaw to be hidden, but as an opportunity to grow. "I don't know if I could," she admitted, her insecurity still present. "You won't know if you don't try." Mike shrugged. "And if you need help with scheduling or transportation, we can work that out. It's not a favor, it's an investment in someone who is important to this family." Family. The word resonated within Tess. Wasn't she just an employee here? Just the person who cleaned, cooked, and took care of things? "Can I think about it?" she asked, still hesitant. "Of course." "No pressure." Mike stood up. "In the meantime, I have no problem with you two continuing your lessons. It seems like you're both enjoying it." As if to confirm his words, they heard Chloe's light footsteps coming down the stairs. The girl appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face anxious. "Are you done talking?" "Can I come back?" Mike exchanged a look with Tess, as if asking for permission to share what they had discussed. She gave a slight nod. "Yes, we're done," he answered, smiling at his daughter. "And I must say, I'm very proud of the teacher you're becoming." Chloe's face lit up. "So you're not mad? We can keep having lessons?" "I'm not mad. And yes, you can continue." Mike affectionately ruffled his daughter's hair. "But I want to propose a change." "What change?" Chloe immediately looked suspicious. "How about, instead of hiding the lessons, you have them openly? That way I can see Tess's progress too, and maybe even help out from time to time." Chloe considered the proposal for a moment, then looked at Tess. "What do you think? Can we let Daddy watch our lessons?" There was so much innocence in that question, so much naturalness in how Chloe viewed the situation, that Tess felt a wave of affection for the girl. For Chloe, there was no shame in learning, regardless of age or circumstance. "I think we can," Tess replied, surprising herself with her own courage. "But he has to promise not to interrupt." Mike raised his hands in surrender. "I promise to be the quietest, best-behaved student in the class." Chloe laughed, running to hug her father and then Tess. The tension that had hung in the kitchen moments before had completely dissipated, replaced by a sense of acceptance, belonging. As Chloe chatted excitedly about the plans for the next lesson, Tess realized that something fundamental had changed. Her deepest secret, the one she had carried like a burden her entire adult life, that had been exposed. And surprisingly, it hadn't destroyed her. On the contrary, it seemed to have opened a door she had always been afraid to walk through. She looked at Mike, who was watching his daughter with obvious pride, and felt a gratitude she couldn't express in words, even if she could already read and write perfectly. Some emotions, she realized, were beyond the reach of letters. For the first time in a long time, Tess felt that maybe, just maybe, the future could be different from the past. A future where she would no longer have to hide. In the days following Mike's discovery, a subtle change settled over the routine at the Parker house. The lessons, which were once secret and full of excitement, now had a tension that Tess couldn't ignore. Even with Mike's acceptance, even with his encouragement, something had changed inside her. The shame, which had followed her like a shadow for so long, grew again. Every time she picked up a pencil to write and felt Mike's eyes on her, Tess relived all the times she had been judged, all the doors that had closed, all the pitying looks she had received throughout her life. It wasn't Mike's fault. He tried to be discreet, not to interfere, just watching from a distance as Chloe conducted the lessons with her usual energy. Sometimes he would even praise Tess's progress, noting how she could already read more complex words or write short sentences without help. But for Tess, having an adult witness her struggles, her stumbles, her moments of confusion with concepts that 6-year-olds easily mastered, it was simply unbearable. In the second week after the discovery, Tess started making excuses to avoid the lessons. "I need to finish the ironing today," she said one afternoon, when Chloe appeared in the laundry room with her notebook and colored pencils. "Can we save the lesson for tomorrow?" "But you said that yesterday, too," Chloe protested, her blue eyes showing confusion. "And the day before you were too tired." Tess continued ironing Mike's shirt, avoiding the girl's gaze. "I'm a bit behind on the housework. Your dad will need these shirts tomorrow. I can help you with the ironing and then we can do the lesson." Chloe didn't give up easily. "I know I can't use the iron, but I can fold the pieces that are already ironed." The girl's persistence tugged at Tess's heart. How could she explain to a child the complex tangle of feelings she was experiencing? The shame, the fear, the sense of inadequacy that had returned with full force. "Better not, little one," she replied, trying to soften the refusal with a smile. "We'll get back to the lessons when I'm less busy." Chloe's face fell, the disappointment evident in her clear eyes. Without another word, the girl turned and left the laundry room, dragging her feet down the hall. Tess felt a lump in her throat. It hurt to push Chloe away like that, especially after everything the girl had done for her. But the shame was stronger. The idea of sitting at the table, under Mike's watchful eye, trying to decipher words that any child would read effortlessly, was too much to bear. In the following days, the pattern continued. Tess found increasingly elaborate excuses to avoid the study sessions. She was always too busy, too tired, or had some unavoidable commitment. Chloe, in turn, grew quieter, her invitations for lessons becoming less frequent, as if she already expected the rejection. The atmosphere in the Parker house, once so light and welcoming, now felt heavy with unspoken tension. Mike noticed the change but kept his distance, respecting what seemed to be Tess's decision. One evening, after putting Chloe to bed, Mike came downstairs and found Tess finishing up in the kitchen. She had developed the habit of waiting, until he put his daughter to bed before doing the final chores, thus avoiding any possibility of being invited for a night lesson. "Tess," he called softly, "can we talk for a minute?" She froze, her hand still holding the dish towel. "Of course, sir." "Please, call me Mike. We've talked about this." He smiled, sitting down at the kitchen table and indicating the chair opposite him. "Sit for a bit." Reluctantly, Tess obeyed, keeping her hands in her lap and her eyes downcast. "So is everything okay with work?" Mike asked, his tone casual but his eyes attentive. "Yes, sir. Mike, everything's great." "And with you, are you all right?" Tess hesitated. Lying had never been her strong suit, especially to people who treated her with kindness. "I'm fine," she finally replied, without much conviction. Mike nodded slowly, as if processing the answer. "I noticed the lessons with Chloe have stopped." It wasn't a question, but the comment hung between them, demanding a response. Tess felt her face grow warm. "I've been busy," she murmured. "A lot of chores to catch up on." "I see." Mike didn't seem convinced, but he didn't press her either. "So Chloe misses them." Tess bit her lower lip. "She's a wonderful child, a natural teacher." "Yes, she is." A proud smile crossed Mike's face. "You know, she's never shown so much interest in teaching before, not even with her dolls or school friends." Tess didn't know what to say, so she remained silent, her eyes fixed on her own hands. "I wanted you to know," Mike continued, "that my offer to help with adult literacy programs still stands. I looked into some at the public library. They have classes at different times, including in the evening." The mention of formal literacy programs made Tess shrink inwardly. The idea of sitting in a room full of strangers, all of them knowing her limitation, was terrifying. "Thank you, but I don't know if I'm ready for that," she answered honestly. Mike nodded, understanding. "No pressure. I just want you to know there are options," he paused, "and that nothing has changed regarding your job here. I still trust you completely." Mike's kind words only increased the guilt Tess felt. Here he was, offering help, securing her job, and she couldn't even match his daughter's enthusiasm. "I really appreciate it," she said, her voice little more than a whisper. Mike stood up, indicating the conversation was over. "Good night, Tess. Don't stay up too late." After he left, Tess remained seated for a long moment, the silence of the house weighing on her. She thought of Chloe, of the sparkle in her eyes when she explained something new, of the infinite patience she showed when Tess stumbled over words. She missed those moments, but the shame was too high a wall to climb. In the days that followed, the distance between Tess and Chloe grew. There were still smiles, still conversations about the school day or Chloe's drawings, but that special bond the lessons had created was missing. It was as if an invisible thread connecting them had been cut. Tess noticed the sadness in Chloe's eyes, the way the girl would look hopefully at the clock when she finished her homework, as if still hoping Tess would suggest a study session. But the suggestion never came, and the sparkle in the girl's eyes dimmed with each passing day. One afternoon, Tess was cleaning Chloe's room when she noticed something on the girl's desk. It was a different notebook from the ones they used in their lessons, with a cover decorated with sparkling stars. Curious, Tess opened it. On the first few pages, there were colorful drawings, most of them depicting two figures, a small girl with blonde hair and a taller woman, also blonde. In some drawings, the two were sitting at a table with books. In others, they were standing side by side, smiling. Under each drawing, there were short sentences written in Chloe's still imperfect handwriting. "Me and Tess studying, teaching my friend, special lesson day." Tess felt a lump in her throat. She continued flipping through the notebook and found a kind of diary, where Chloe wrote about her experiences as a teacher. The sincerity of those childish words hit her deeply. Today, Tess learned the word elephant. It's a big, hard word. She was very happy when she could read it by herself. Tess said she never had a teacher as good as me. I felt important. I explained to Tess how to put syllables together. She practices every day at home. I'm proud of her. The last entries, however, reflected the recent change. Tess is too busy for lessons. I hope she has time tomorrow. It's been 3 days with no lesson. Tess must be very tired. I think Tess doesn't want to learn with me anymore. Maybe I'm not a good teacher. The last entry made Tess's heart ache. It wasn't fair for Chloe to blame herself like that. The girl had been the best teacher anyone could wish for. Patient, enthusiastic, never judgmental. The problem wasn't her. It was Tess's own fear. She carefully closed the notebook and put it back where she had found it. She finished cleaning the room with a heavy heart, knowing she was hurting someone who only wanted to help her. That evening, while preparing dinner, Tess heard voices coming from the living room, Mike and Chloe talking in low tones. Normally, she wouldn't pay attention, respecting the family's privacy, but something in Chloe's choked-up voice made her stop and listen. And now she doesn't even want to have lessons anymore, Chloe was saying, her voice sad. Did I do something wrong, Daddy? Of course not, Princess. Mike's voice was soft, comforting. Sometimes adults get embarrassed when they're learning something new, especially something that most people learn as a child. But there's no reason to be embarrassed. She was doing so well. I know, sweetie, but not everyone sees things the same way you do. There was a moment of silence, and Tess imagined Chloe absorbing her father's words, trying to understand emotional complexities beyond her years. I loved teaching, Tess, Chloe said finally, her voice small and sad. I was learning from her, too. The sincerity of those words hit Tess like a punch to the gut. She backed away a few steps, not wanting to hear more, feeling even worse for being the cause of the girl's sadness. What did you learn from her? Mike asked, genuinely curious. I learned that it takes a lot of courage to try hard things. And that it's never too late to learn something new, like you always say. There was a pause. And I also learned to be patient, because sometimes we need time to understand things. Tess felt her eyes fill with tears. How could a 6-year-old be so wise, so understanding? Those are very important lessons, Mike agreed. You know, sometimes people need some time to themselves, to think, to get used to changes. Maybe that's what Tess is doing. Do you think she'll want to have lessons with me again someday? The hope in Chloe's voice was palpable, and Tess felt even worse for having disappointed her. I don't know, Princess. That's something only Tess can decide. Tess quietly returned to the kitchen, her heart heavy. The conversation she had just overheard echoed in her mind throughout dinner, as she served the plates and watched Chloe play with her food, less cheerful than usual. In the following days, Tess noticed Mike watching her more often, as if he were trying to figure something out. She maintained her routine, efficient and silent as always, but inside, guilt gnawed at her every time she saw Chloe's sad gaze. A week later, Mike called her into his office for a talk after dinner. Tess entered the room with apprehension, fearing what he might say. "Please, have a seat," Mike said, indicating a chair in front of his desk. Tess obeyed, her hands clasped in her lap, trying to hide her nervousness. "Tess," he began, his tone direct but gentle, "I need to be frank with you about something." She nodded, bracing for the worst. Maybe he had finally realized he couldn't keep someone like her working in his house, someone who couldn't even read a note or a recipe. "My daughter has been very sad without you," Mike said, surprising her. "You can stay close to her, but I also want you to study somewhere else." Tess blinked, confused. It wasn't what she had expected to hear. I don't understand." "It's simple," Mike continued. "Chloe misses you. Not just as a teacher, but as a friend, as someone she shared something special with." He leaned forward. "And I think you miss her too." Tess couldn't deny it. It was true. She missed Chloe's excitement, her contagious enthusiasm, the sense of accomplishment when she managed to decipher a new word under her guidance. "But I understand why the lessons stopped," Mike went on. "It must be hard for you, an adult, learning from a child while I watch. That's why I suggested the formal literacy programs." He opened a drawer and took out a few colorful brochures, placing them on the desk. "There's a particularly good program on Tuesday and Thursday nights at the public library." I went there to talk to the coordinator. It's a welcoming environment with people of all ages, some seniors, some immigrants, people who, like you, didn't have the opportunity to study when they were young. Tess looked at the brochures, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. "What I'm proposing," Mike continued, "is that you resume your friendship with Chloe. Let her keep helping you in her own way, but also seek this more formal instruction. I can adjust your work schedule so you can attend the classes, and I can even cover the transportation costs." Tess felt something stir inside her, a small spark of hope, perhaps. The idea of learning in a structured environment, with materials appropriate for adults, was scary, but also tempting. "Why would you do this for me?" she asked, genuinely perplexed. Mike smiled. "Because you're important to this family, Tess. Because my daughter cares about you. And because I believe everyone deserves a chance to learn, no matter when." Tess looked at the brochures again, this time allowing herself to imagine what it would be like to sit in a real classroom, with a real teacher, with books made for people like her. "I'm not pressuring you," Mike added, "but I'd like you to consider the offer for yourself. And yes, also for Chloe, who misses you terribly." Something inside Tess began to loosen, like a knot being slowly untied. The shame was still there, but alongside it, something new was growing, a sense of possibility, that maybe it wasn't too late. "I'll think about it," she finally replied. "Thank you." "Mike," he smiled upon hearing his name, without the usual "sir" Tess insisted on using. "That's all I ask, that you think about it." As she left the office, Tess took the brochures with her, hidden inside her apron pocket. She wasn't ready to make a decision yet, but for the first time in weeks, she felt there was a path forward, not just a return to lessons with Chloe, but something more, something that could truly change her life. As she went upstairs to tidy Chloe's room for the night, Tess felt an unexpected relief, as if a weight she didn't even know she was carrying had been lifted from her shoulders. It was time, and perhaps, to take a new step. The public library was a 20-minute bus ride from the Parker house. It was an old red brick building with large arched windows and a stone staircase leading to the main entrance. Tess had passed by it dozens of times, but had never had the courage to go inside. To her, libraries were intimidating places, temples of a knowledge to which she had no access. That Tuesday evening, however, she climbed the steps with hesitant feet, Chloe's small hand held firmly in hers. Mike walked beside them, carrying a folder with the necessary documents for registration. "This is going to be awesome, Tess," Chloe said, skipping beside her. "Mrs. Roberts, the coordinator, is super nice. Daddy and I came to meet her last week." Tess just nodded, her heart pounding against her chest. After days of consideration, she had finally accepted Mike's offer to attend the adult literacy program. Chloe had been so excited about the news that she had insisted on coming with her on the first day. "You don't need to be nervous," Mike said, noticing her apprehension. "Everyone who attends the program is in the same situation as you." The inside of the library was cozy, with dark wooden shelves full of books and reading areas with comfortable armchairs. A woman with grey hair and a kind smile approached as soon as they entered. "You must be Tess," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Eleanor Roberts, the program coordinator. Mike and Chloe have told me a lot about you." Tess shook the offered hand, feeling strangely shy. "Nice to meet you." "The pleasure is all mine. We're always happy to welcome new students." "Mrs. Roberts smiled at Chloe. "And this young lady told me you already have an excellent private tutor." Chloe puffed out her chest, proud. "I taught Tess how to read some words. She learns super fast." "I'm sure she does. Now, how about you accompany me to the room where our classes are held?" A registration is done there. The room was at the back of the library, a large, well-lit space with round tables and comfortable chairs. On the walls, there were colorful posters with the alphabet, maps, and motivational quotes. A small whiteboard took up one wall, and there was a shelf with books that looked simpler than those in the rest of the library. A few people were already in the room, an elderly man, two middle-aged women, and a young man who looked to be in his 20s. They all glanced briefly as the group entered, but soon returned to their activities, showing no judgment. "We have students of all ages and from all walks of life," Mrs. Roberts explained as she led them to a table in the corner, where forms were organized in stacks. Some are seniors who didn't have the opportunity to study in their youth. Others are immigrants learning our language. Some, like you, started working very young and missed the chance to complete their education. She picked up a form and placed it on the table. This is our registration form. I usually help new students fill it out, since many can't yet read or write with ease. Tess looked at the paper, feeling that familiar sense of inadequacy in the face of a text she couldn't fully comprehend. But then, something caught her attention. At the top of the form, there was a word she recognized immediately. Registration. Registration, she read aloud, surprising herself. Registration. Mrs. Roberts smiled, genuinely impressed. Very good. I see you already know some words. Encouraged, Tess examined the rest of the form. She recognized other words. Name, age, address. Words that Chloe had taught her during their impromptu lessons. Can I try to fill in some parts? She asked hesitantly. Of course you can, the coordinator replied, handing her a pen. With a slightly trembling hand, Tess began to write her full name in the indicated space. The letters came out a little crooked but legible. Next to it, she wrote her age. In the address field, she managed to write the name of the street where she lived, although she needed help with the number. Every recognized word, every field filled out on her own, was a small victory. Tess felt a joy growing inside her, a sense of accomplishment she had never experienced before. It wasn't just the act of writing. It was the understanding that those symbols, which had been mysterious and intimidating for so long, were now beginning to make sense. Look, Daddy, Chloe exclaimed, pointing to the form. Tess is writing by herself. Mike watched with a discreet smile, respecting the moment. I see that. Impressive. When they finished filling out the form, partly by Tess, partly with Mrs. Roberts's help, the coordinator explained how the classes worked, the schedule, and the materials that would be used. We start from the basics, respecting each student's pace, she explained. No one is pressured or compared to others. Everyone has their own learning timeline. Before they left, Mrs. Roberts handed Tess a small, colorful book. This is your first workbook. You can take it home and practice on the days you don't have class. Tess held the book with reverence, as if it were a precious treasure. In a way, it was. On the way back home, Chloe talked non-stop, excited about everything they had seen. The library is amazing. So many books. And the classroom is nice, isn't it? Mrs. Roberts seems super cool. And did you see how many different people there were? Even a young guy like that. Tess smiled, listening to the girl's enthusiasm. She felt light, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. For the first time in a long time, perhaps for the first time in her life, she felt like she was taking control of her own destiny. The following months brought a remarkable transformation to Tess's life. Twice a week, she attended classes at the library, absorbing knowledge with the veracity of someone who had been starved for a long time. On other days, she continued to practice with Chloe, who still took her role as a teacher very seriously. The shame that once consumed her gave way to a growing confidence. She discovered that she was a quick learner, that her brain absorbed information rapidly when given the opportunity. What she had lacked was not ability, but simply access. Mike kept his promise, adjusting Tess's work schedule to accommodate the classes, and even hiring a helper for the days she left early. More than an employer, he had become an ally, someone who genuinely wanted to see her succeed. But it was Chloe who continued to be her biggest cheerleader. The girl eagerly awaited reports from the library classes, wanted to see all the exercises Tess completed, and celebrated each new achievement as if it were her own. You're learning faster than anyone I know, Chloe said one afternoon, as they reviewed a writing exercise together. Mrs. Roberts told Daddy that too. Tess smiled, touched by the pride in the girl's voice. It's because I have the best teacher in the world helping me. At home, Tess began to show off her new skill in small ways, reading product labels, leaving written notes for Mike, taking down phone messages. Each act, no matter how simple, represented a victory over her past. One evening, 3 months after starting the program, Tess came home especially excited. Chloe immediately noticed that something different had happened. "What is it?" the girl asked, curious. "You look super happy." Tess pulled a colorful certificate from her bag. "Mrs. Roberts gave me this today. I completed the first level of the program." Chloe took the certificate, admiring the beautiful paper with Tess's name written in elegant letters. "This calls for a celebration. Can I get something from my room? It's a surprise." Without waiting for an answer, the girl ran upstairs, returning minutes later with a package wrapped in colorful paper. "It's a gift," she said, handing it to Tess. "Daddy helped me pick it out." Moved, Tess carefully unwrapped the gift. It was a children's book, with a hardcover and colorful illustrations. "The Little Mermaid." She read the title, feeling a wave of emotion as she realized she could read those words without hesitation. "It's my favorite story," Chloe explained. "I thought we could read it together to celebrate." They sat on the living room sofa, side by side, the book open between them. Tess began to read aloud, slowly but steadily. Sometimes she stumbled on a more difficult word, and Chloe would gently help her. On other pages, Chloe would read, demonstrating how rhythm and intonation could bring the printed words to life. When they finished the story, Tess closed the book and held it to her chest, feeling a gratitude that could barely be contained. "Thank you for encouraging me," she said, looking into Chloe's blue eyes. "If it weren't for you, I never would have believed in myself." Chloe smiled and hugged her tightly. "Now we can read together forever." In that moment, sitting on the sofa with Chloe in her arms and a book on her lap, Tess felt a deep certainty that her life had changed irrevocably. The world of letters, which had been closed to her for so long, was now opening up like a universe of infinite possibilities. It wouldn't be easy. There was still so much to learn, so many challenges to overcome. But for the first time, Tess looked to the future without fear. With every word she learned, with every sentence she could read, a new path was drawn before her, a path illuminated by knowledge and the courage of a 6-year-old girl who believed in her when she didn't even believe in herself. And that, Tess realized, was the greatest gift anyone could ever receive, the chance to start over, the opportunity to write her own story, one word at a time. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.